Hello.
Hello and welcome. I'm Yao.
And I'm Helen, and we're both correspondents with Xinhua News Agency.
Yes. So this is Liangjiahe village in northwest China's Shaanxi province.
That's right. And we're around about just over 400 kilometers away from the Terracotta Warriors, which I'm sure you've all heard of.
Yeah.
But what's so special about Liangjiahe? Why are we here today?
Wow. If we're going to talk about this place, we have to start from Chinese President Xi Jinping. So Xi Jinping lived here for about 7 years. Mm-hmm. He got here at the age of 15.
That's right.
So this is like, he called this place as his second home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right. And while he was here, he was part of a wider program in China where youths were actually sent to the countryside to be re-educated.
Yeah.
So he started off here as just a young teenager, well, a late teenager. He was 15 years old. So he was 15 years old. And then by the time he left in his early 20s, he was actually the village party chief, wasn't he?
Yes.
So this is obviously a very interesting, informative period of his life, right? Mm-hmm. So we're here to have a little look at that, aren't we? We're gonna, what we're going to do, we're going to look at some old houses.
Totally.
That's right. We're going to look at some initiatives that he started, and we're also going to sort of almost chart the course of these formative years in the president's life, right?
Yeah. As we're traveling across China, this is our first stop, Shaanxi, and we're also going to Hebei, Fujian, Zhejiang, Shanghai. 5 places that he has lived and worked for the past decades, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to find out the making of the Chinese president.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're exploring the making of.
Yes.
And it's good to start here, isn't it? Because this is the sort of the first area where you can really see change and the roots of his philosophy, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So let's get off the car.
Would you like to join us?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So as you might be able to see, there's a lot of green here, but there's also a lot of yellow. There's a lot of yellow earth, which is a big characteristic of this area. And I know the President has talked about that before. Mm-hmm. Also, a lot of the buildings here are made out of the same yellow earth, right, the compacted soil.
Yes.
And one of those buildings that is made out of that compacted soil is one of the first places that he lived, right? Which is where we're going to go now. So have a little look around and we'll meet you by the house.
Yeah, and this village is, it has a population of about 1,200 with 400 households, approximately. So here we are. So most of you must have heard of Xi Jinping as Chinese president, but what is his story and how has he become like one of the most influential men in his era, right?
That's right.
So let's go find out from his first home here in Shaanxi. Yeah, come on. This way. Great. Wow. So would you like to start from the house?
So this is a yadong, which is actually referred to quite often as a cave house, but it's a little bit more than a cave house, I think, because it's actually constructed, if you come a little bit closer, out of the same earth I was mentioning earlier on, and also hay. So it's compacted onto the side of the hill.
Yeah.
And when we go in later, you'll be able to see how they've made it into like a cave shape. And it means that it keeps the warmth in winter, but it also keeps it cool in summer.
Yeah.
And an interesting point actually about the coolness in summer is that obviously in the late 60s and early 70s, refrigerators were not commonplace, right?
That's
so
why
come and have a look over here.
our solution here. Yeah. So
this hole in the wall.
it's a local refrigerator, right? Yeah. Should we get a closer look at this? Yeah, it's as simple as it is, right?
I mean, there's no tray for eggs or anything. It's just a dark and black hole. And again, it means that it keeps it cool in the hot summer months, but then also it's a place to keep it in the winter.
In the winter, yeah, it's really helpful here.
So
this is
this is President Xi, one of his first homes when he came to this area.
Yeah.
A yadong. Come on in.
Let's have a look at the house in detail first. Wow. They must have kept this place as it was before, right? Yeah. Actually, she shared this yaodong, or the bedroom, with 5 other guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this actually that you're looking at the moment is a bed. It's called a kang, and it's created like, if you look down here, this is a fireplace. So under here is where you would just chuck all your fuel and warm up the bed, and the chimney runs all the way along the bed.
Yeah.
So it means A, that the smoke doesn't fill the actual room itself,
Yeah.
and B, it actually warms this bed here. But But despite that, it doesn't look the most comfortable bed ever, does it? I mean,
Yeah.
it is hard. It's made out of bricks. It's made out of soil, and there is a Hessian mat here, and also a wool one on the top, felt. It's felted on top. And actually, the president has, on many occasions, talked about this bed, and along with his fellows that he used to share the bed with, they also had unwanted bedfellows, which was fleas. Yeah. Which, I mean, you can imagine there would have been farm animals. It's in the countryside, and he said that the first couple of years it kept him up at night. He'd be itching. It would be really annoying. And he said that he got used to it, but I can't imagine you'd ever fully get used to that, would you?
The president actually talked about the flea story on various occasions, home and abroad. So he called this as one of his biggest challenges when he first got to the countryside, because after all, he was a city boy from Beijing at the beginning, right?
Exactly,
So,
exactly. And this would have been a far cry, I imagine, from what he was used to. Do you want to come and have a little look around?
Yeah. Let's go have a look at the facilities here. The lamps and the cups and...
So obviously there would have been no wired electricity in those days.
I think they rely on lamps mostly.
On lamps, on gas lamps, yeah. And these would have been taken out to the field to hold their water, these canisters.
Yeah.
And I think this is an interesting thing. Can you tell us a bit about this, Meow? What is this?
All I know is this is a tour that local people make noodles.
Okay.
And we were told here earlier when we got here, right? Like the first meal the president had when he was here at the age of 15 was the noodles made out of this. Yeah. So this is like for garlic or something similar stuff.
It does look like a cheese grater, exactly. Just like a grater. But they, whereas normally you imagine noodles to be thrown in the air and stretched and moved like this, they actually make it into a paste here, right? And they'll rub it along, and it makes almost like drop noodles.
It's like the Chinese version of pasta or risto or something.
Exactly.
It's common and typical local cuisine here in Shaanxi.
Okay,
so
fantastic.
Wow. And back to what you said about the heating system, actually, it's like local solution too. The way to keep them warm in winter, like they don't have the heating system we had nowadays, right? But that one is clever too.
Yeah, exactly. And also the fact that it pulls the smoke out, because I remember when I first saw this, I was like, oh, this whole cave must be like full of smoke. But
and it's multifunctional. It's for cooking too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of cooking, those are all the cups and bows here. Yeah. Very old-fashioned, right?
And then these big pots down here are for fermented products and rice. Is that right? Because this would have been, quite an airtight tin to keep any pests away,
that
right?
One I cannot say because we need to ask local guys to find out. But it looks like for fermented vegetables or All right. And before we go for the next stop, you want to talk about the lamp here?
Okay, so this, it's
Can we touch it?
It's quite a naive looking thing, but it's actually a lamp. So there is a story that the president was known for reading a lot during his time here. In fact, the villagers said that he would often be seen with books as thick as bricks.
Thick as bricks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And at night, when he was being kept up by the fleas, unfortunately, he would actually sit here and read by this light. So he was known for reading Chairman Mao's Little Red Book and also Shakespeare. And again, it's another thing that he talks about quite often on many occasions at home and abroad.
When he was visiting UK, and he did say that he was reading Shakespeare here, and he was trying to find the place of Shakespeare. And on the other occasions, he said that he read Chairman Mao's the Little Red Book.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So he would have been working in the fields in the daytime, and at night he would escape to literature.
And it's also interesting that according to the local villagers who lived with him before, and they said that because he read a lot of books and he was very polite and easygoing, so villagers would come to his place at night to just chat. And whenever they have problems they're finding like very hard to solve, and then they would just come to the president and ask for advice. Yeah.
I also heard that they would come to him for stories as well, because obviously he was from Beijing, he was from a big city.
Yes.
And they would come to him and ask him to tell them about life in the city and
the
about
locals
going
were very
on.
keen on finding out what's going on outside this remote village, right? Yeah. So much about this first home when the president got here at 15. He stayed here for about 2 years and 3 months.
That's right, till 1971.
end, we were told by local villagers that for the 7 years he lived here, he spent his time in 3 different cave dwellings, right?
That's right, yeah.
So we're taking you to 2 of them just to have a look and get the feeling of what the life was back then. Yeah. So shall we take the car again?
I think
It
we
was
should, yes.
Nice trip, right? So,
Come and join us in the
yeah.
car.
Is that right? Yeah.
Super.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the way to our next stop, I do have a side story to tell.
Please share.
Yeah, because mostly he spent all the time in this village, right? But in 1973, he was temporarily transferred to a nearby village, and he was trying to help locals there too. And actually, he built the first toilet that separates men and women.
Oh, wow, okay.
For that village, because back then they do share toilets.
Yeah.
So.
And in fact, he did a couple of firsts when he was here, and we're going to somewhere in a moment by one of his
Lots
other houses.
of stories there.
There's a lot of firsts, and we're going to look at another first in a moment. But yeah, I mean, look at this countryside. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And
But
speaking of countryside, you do know the stories about how the president was trying to get used to the rural life, right?
No, tell me. Please share.
Okay, right. Yeah, people are enjoying the view. So, the president, it must be really hard for him, like a city boy, to get used to the rural life.
Oh, yeah.
So, but he said it was hard at the beginning, and then he was soon used to carrying lots of stuff, heavy stuff, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that one.
And in fact, actually, as we were looking at those mountains, then it reminded me. So he said that there, yeah, exactly. It took him a long time, but he soon found himself able to carry up to 100 kilograms on over
100
one
kilograms.
shoulder.
Wow. Drop up here. Yeah.
Okay.
For the past 2 days, we were here and we were trying to pick up stories of the president. Yeah, it was really fun. And this is one of his cave houses too. Let's go find out.
Okay, come and join us.
Yeah. So he spent 7 years here, right? And in 1974, he joined the Communist Party. He became a party member. And soon after that, he became the party chief of this village.
That's right.
And
it was interesting, actually, because it was in this role, after a couple of years of living here, that he began to start initiatives that were social-based. They were for the community.
Yeah.
And in these yadongs here, which is where he used to live in one just down there. But they actually have these now as demonstration zones as some of those initiatives, right?
Yeah.
So
let's start from the first one. Yeah. Okay. Wow. It's a mill, right?
That's right. This is a mill.
Wow.
I believe the president was awarded an award for being a model youth, right? When he was here.
Yes. And he was awarded a motorcycle, right? At the beginning, he was supposed to have a motorcycle for himself, but he said, "No, I don't want this because it's not helpful for the other villages." So he exchanged this motorcycle to the tours here we're having, the machines for making flour, and also that one is an engine. Yeah, let's go have a look.
So the difference there is that he could have had a motorized bike for himself, but instead he actually bought equipment that the whole community could use, right?
Yes. So these are all the demonstrations of communal equipments donated by the president. Yeah.
And obviously before motorized equipment came along, it would have been done by the traditional means, which would have been a donkey and stones and actually just hard graft, right?
Let's go to the next one. Yeah. Wow.
So this next one is quite nice because the president has done quite a few things to do with women, and this is a really nice example of that, right?
This is actually the consignment shop. Yeah. So the president really wanted to do something practical for local villages, and he noticed that local villages had to travel 5 kilometers or even further to the nearby town just to buy groceries. So he decided to initiate this one, a consignment shop. It brings all the stuff from the town, and it also helps local villages to sell their stuff, right? the eggs and handmade stuff.
Exactly, yeah. So it just means that they have a wider customer base, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So what sort of items would have been made here in Lianjiahe? I know that there's obviously a lot
Sewing products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then the farming produce
And
as well.
agricultural products.
Yeah. Cool.
And
Okay, and this is the one that I was getting excited about.
yeah.
So this actual initiative was for women. So women actually were in a sewing workshop or a sewing group,
Yeah.
and they would make clothes for the community, but they would make them for free.
For free, yeah.
So it meant that everyone in the village was able to have access to good, hardy clothes, and it was made by their fellow villagers. So
Yeah,
come and have a look.
usually the villages, like before this initiative, local villages had to make clothes by themselves, right? So it's a lot of work for the women and men. But now after this one, like local female villagers were making clothes for everyone else in the villages.
Yeah.
Let's go find out. Yeah.
Come on in.
I'm doing this now. Wow. That's not something you're gonna wear these days, but it was. I'm sure it's popular back
I
then.
don't know. I can
Yeah.
see myself in that red one.
Lovely shoes, right?
Oh, they were
Yeah.
lovely, yeah.
Let's keep going then.
Okay. So, what's the last place that we're going to look at here in this complex?
I'm thinking about we should go to one of the other caves. He lived here, and he stayed here from 1971 to 1975, right
And was he
before
here with a big lot of people as well? So the last cave we were at, he stayed with five
five
other
other guys.
Yeah.
For this one, like for the first 3 years, he stayed with another guy, and for the last year, because his roommate went for college, so he stayed here by himself for 1 year.
Okay. Well, come on in. Let's have a look.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow. So it's a slightly different
nice.
setup than the last one we went to, right?
Yeah.
And here's some books. We talked a little bit about his love of reading earlier on.
Yeah, because remember, like the local villagers said, Xi's books were as thick as bricks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also about this photo, yeah. Let's have a look at this one. Closer.
Okay.
It's a group picture of Xi and a couple of other villagers, right? And from the date here, you can see this photo was taken on October the 8th in 1975. Yeah. 1975 is actually the year he left for Beijing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what this is, right? This was actually a gift from his fellows in the
Yes.
picture, right?
Yeah.
It's quite a touching story, I think.
Yeah, because local villagers were really sad about him leaving, and then on the day he was supposed to leave the town, and so he was supposed to leave the village, and then all the villagers in this photo went to the town with him, and they found a photo studio, and they took this picture, and each of them actually paid a quarter too, but not the president, because all the other villagers insisted that they should pay for him.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it's a touching
nice.
story.
Yeah, it is,
Yeah.
and it's a nice memento for him as well from his time.
Yeah.
So a little bit more of a look around the room. So the last one we were in, the bed was obviously quite near to the door, and it had the heat from the hearth that went all the way along. And this is a slightly smaller bed, but it's right at the bottom, isn't it?
Yes.
And these newspapers around, because he was known for reading the newspaper as well and keeping up to date. And like you said earlier on, a lot of the villagers would come to him for news from the city as well.
And we do have something here, like this document. This one, this one is like a reply from the authorities saying that he has become a member of the Communist Party of China. Yeah,
and you can
together with
see his
a few
date
others.
here.
Yeah, and his name is here. Yeah.
And the date.
On January 10th in 1974, actually right after he joined the party, he became the party chief of this village, as we told you earlier. Yeah.
And then obviously we did talk about some of the initiatives that he began here.
Yeah.
And another one, let's go and have a little look at it now.
Yeah.
was something that he began, and it was a first. And we mentioned earlier on how he liked to read the newspaper, and
Yeah.
I like the story behind this. So he was reading the People's Daily once, and he saw an article about this this new
Methane,
this new type
the
of energy,
projects.
this
Yeah.
new way of like creating energy to make gas.
Yeah.
And this gas could be used to power lamps in
Yeah.
houses, but also for cookers as well, because obviously we've seen down there with the Hearths, a lot of the cookers actually were made were heated with fuel, weren't they?
Yeah.
So it was
another
smoky and
energy
dirty.
solution,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And this was like
Yeah.
a different energy solution. So this over here
Yeah. That's-
is what's left of the methane tank.
Yeah. Wow. And just picking up on what you said about the People's Daily, right? So after she read the story about this energy project, he actually went for an extra mile because he went to Sichuan, the province where he noticed the project. He tried to learn the experience and then brought the experience back to this village.
Okay.
And this is why we got to the have this project as the first ever in the Shaanxi province.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. And actually, there's a funny story behind this, which the president has
Oh,
shared
I
on
couldn't wait to hear it.
on multiple occasions. So obviously, with methane, the majority of the product is manure,
Yeah.
because it's the way that the manure rots down and it creates the gas. And he said that when he was actually building this, he hit a pocket of gas which caused pressure, and it
Oh.
caused all the manure to come smashing into his
Oh.
face.
Yeah, he said during a TV interview, he said all the manure just come gushing out on his face, right, covered his face. And he was very proud to tell the audience that this is the first ever project in this province. And he actually said like a few days later, the other project came within the same province, but his project is still the first one.
Yeah.
Great story, right?
Yeah.
Love this one. Yeah. So far we have taken you to two of the cave dwellings the president lived when he was re-educated
That's
in the
right, yeah, yeah.
countryside as tens of millions of his peers here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he came here as a privileged teenager, right?
Yeah.
And he became a farmer. And then he gained membership of the party.
Yeah.
And then very soon after, he became the village party chief.
Uh-huh.
So even in the 7 short years that he was here, you can see a huge progression in terms of
Totally.
himself in his career development.
It's a life change for him.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And then he left here and he went to go to university. So that's the next stage.
Yeah.
But for now, you can really see the roots of his philosophy here among us
Yes.
in Shaanxi, right?
Yeah, he started from being a farmer when he was only 15.
15, yeah.
And then he went to college again. That's very important for his life later, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So,
And also, he came back to this place in 1993, and later in 2015, when he has become the Chinese president, he came back to the village with his wife Peng Liyuan,
yeah.
and he was quite he can even call the names of some of the villages.
Yeah,
their
that's
nicknames,
right. Yeah, yeah.
So
And he also said when he did come back in 2015 that on the day that he left for university, he felt like he was always going to leave a piece of his heart here.
oh yeah,
And that he would always think of and refer to this village or this area as his second hometown.
Yes.
Which is, yeah,
it's quite touching, right?
it is.
Yeah.
Not get run over.
Yeah. So, guys, this is only our first stop, and this is one of the many as we are traveling across China to Shaanxi, this one, and also to Hebei,
Hebei,
Fujian, Zhejiang, Shanghai, all the places the president has worked and lived for the past decades. So we're trying to look for the answers to the question of the making of the Chinese president, right?
What was the making of him?
Yeah.
And this is just one part of that long
Yeah.
journey that we're going to go on. And we really hope that you tune in and you watch us again and learn a little bit more about the president and also about China and also about social policies and changes that have gone on over the years from the 60s until, a decade or so ago.
Yes. Before we finish today's live streaming, one more story about the local diet here, because the president once talked about how little meat he used to have here, and then he was delivering a speech abroad.
Yep.
He mentioned that story about this village Liangjiahe, and he said they could not have meat for months, right? But one of his biggest wish back then was to have local villagers get more meat and more often,
Yeah,
right? But based on what we're having right now here, the village is quite well off, I would say.
Yeah.
And people have access to proper food, housing, education, healthcare, and internet.
Yeah. And all the trappings that come with it as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, okay.
So from a consignment store where people could sell their products to a wider area, you now have the internet that actually opens up the whole of China. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you guys for watching our live streaming today, and stay tuned. Let us know if you have any questions.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.